Okay, so let us continue our discussion in the yesterday's class, yesterday's video conference. With all of you, we have discussed the principle of gas chromatography, classification of gas chromatography, and why the classification is made, and the nature of the stationary phase and mobile phase in each of gas chromatographic techniques, instrumental components of gas chromatography. And among the instrumental components, we have completed the discussion on the carrier gas, which is the mobile phase. What type of carrier gas will be used? What are the characteristic features of carrier gases we can use for gas chromatography? We have just discussed, and we have also discussed about the sample injection system. Very important sample injection system or sample injector is going to be hypodermic microsyringe, hypodermic microsyringe. And along with this hypodermic microsyringe, one of the sub-component can also be used, that is sample splitter. The sample splitter will be used to split the sample to the required size. Say, for example, if you are introducing the sample of 25 microliters, the whole 25 microliter of the sample is not going to be consumed during the separation process. So out of 25 microliter, just say for example, only 5 microliter of the sample might have been consumed, and remaining 20 microliter of the sample will be going as a waste. So dependent upon the size of the sample required, the sample splitter will be splitting the sample to the required ratio. So you do remember yesterday while explaining the sampling injection system, this splitter could have also been explained. So splitter is
Yes,
nothing
sir.
but which is used to split the sample to the required size. Reproducible sample size is very much required. So this reproducible size will be obtained by the splitter. Okay, all right. So these are the things we have discussed yesterday. So are you all right, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes,
So
sir.
let us continue our discussion. Next, one of the important components of gas chromatograph is column. As I said yesterday, a column is the heart of the chromatograph or gas chromatographic instrument. The column is going to play a very, very important role, highly essential, because column is a very important component in which the separation is going to be done. So the configuration or the material which is used to construct a column, dimension of the column, the material present inside the column, and the chemical property of that particular column, physical properties of that particular packing material which is present in the chromatographic column, all these things are very, very important. So if we go to the column characteristics in gas chromatography, mainly two types of columns will be employed. The first one will be the packed column, and the second one will be open tubular or capillary columns. More commonly, they are called as capillary columns. And these columns, if you compare the dimensions of packed columns with open tubular or capillary columns, these two columns will be having different dimensions. Dimensions in the sense, it may be length or internal diameter, or the external diameter, whatever it is. These dimensions will be varied. And even the nature of the presence of packing material present inside these columns will also be different. You should keep in your mind that the dimension will be different, and the nature and the type of the packing material which is present inside the chromatographic column, how it is going to be packed, how the stationary phase has been packed in the chromatographic column. These are also variable factors. So normally you consider any chromatographic column for GC, they will be having the length at least 2 meter to 50 meter, or even nowadays it will be extended to up to 400 meter. So Martin and Singe proposed the equation N is equal to L by H, right? Where N is the
Yes, sir.
column efficiency and L is the length of the column, H is the height of the theoretical plate. Uditi, are you online?
yes,
Uditi,
sir.
yes, N is equal to L
Yes,
by
sir.
H.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah, she is going to
Yes.
explain in her seminar while presenting column efficiency. So number of theoretical plates denoted by n, capital N. For any chromatographic separation, this value is going to be increased very simply by increasing the length of the column. However, we have to make sure that the height has not been increased. So, even with the aim to increase the number of theoretical plates, ultimately the column efficiency, the length of the column can be increased so that if we increase the length of the column, the sample throughput, the number of the samples which can be introduced into the chromatography column can also be increased. Say, I have explained in the optimization of the chromatographic resolution by playing with retention factor, right? So retention factor can be optimized by changing the packing material. So you take three columns, one column will be having 15-meter length, another column will be having 20-meter length, and the third column will be having 25-meter length, whatever. And the type of the stationary phases present in these three columns will be different, assume. So with respect to the solutes present in different samples, the relative interaction between the solute and the stationary phase which are present in these three different columns will be going to be occur. So as a result, we can succeed the separation. We cannot leave out any solute from the separation process. So that's what the usage of one or more columns is also possible in chromatographic technique. But in GC, one column cannot be hyphenated with the other column. Means one column cannot be joined with the other column because of difficulty in maintaining the temperature. So therefore, the column may be having the length very short 2 meter up to very long 50 meter. Nowadays, it has reached 400 meter. And the materials which are used to construct the columns are stainless steel or glass or fused silica or polytetrafluoroethylene materials, Teflon materials. While using glass columns, it is an added advantage that we can see glass is transparent. So whether the solute molecules or the separation process is going on, what is the status of the stationary phase inside the chromatographic column, all these things can be seen if we use glass columns. Are you getting my point? Glass columns, they are
Yes,
transparent.
sir.
They are transparent. So we can see the movement of the solutes, or we can see the movement of the carrier gas, or we can see the physical processes which are going to be happen, visible processes. Not all the processes. We cannot say all the processes. Visible processes we can say if the material is glass. And of course, the exterior surface of the glass must be made inert because glass is made by silicate. Glass is made by silicate. The OH group of this glass should not interact with the solute. If the OH group is interacted with the solute, what is the consequence? The adsorption, unwanted adsorption process is
Conception.
going to be occurred there. So glass surface must be inactivated so that any unwanted adsorption should not be taken place over there. So such type of glass material can be used. And these columns are fabricated or devised in such a way that they have to be easily fixed into the thermostatically controllable oven. So oven you have seen, right? Oven you have seen, it is present in our laboratory. So whatever the shape of the coil, whether the coil shaped or W shaped or U shaped column you are going to use in the analysis in the separation process, uh, it must be very easy to place that particular column into the oven. In such a way, we have to design the column. If the column is bigger than the oven oven space available, then it will be difficult to place the column in the oven. So in order to fit these columns into the thermostatically controllable oven, the external diameter will be adjusted to 10 to 30 centimeter. Understood? The external diameter maximum up to 30 and 50 centimeters you can go to devise the columns nowadays by using a bigger dimension ovens. So here you can see a picture of packed column. Let us take the dimensions and the nature of packed columns, how we are going to use, what type of packed column we will be using, what is the material present inside the packed column, and whether the stationary phase is present in the form of thin layer or as a particle which is tightly held in the chromatographic column. What is the shape of the packed column you can see. So you can see, are you able to see the picture now?
Yes,
So
sir.
this is the packed column, just like a coil. This is a circularly coiled packed column made by stainless steel, which can also be made by glass, which can also be made by Teflon, right? So this coiled packed column is having the dimension 2 to 3 meter length and the internal diameter from 2 to 4 millimeter. Internal diameter is for this particular one coil, internal diameter, the space available for the passage of the components through the column, right? That is going to be 2 to 4 millimeter, 2 to 4 millimeter. And the length will be calculated from one end of to other end. The tip of the one end to the other end, the length will be 2 to 3 meter. So this 2 to 3 meter coiled packed column is capable of placing inside the oven of the gas chromatograph. Oven of the gas chromatograph. So this is the dimension of the column. Inside this chromatographic column, a solid stationary phase will be tightly packed homogeneously, which is having a uniform particle size, and the packing is consistent. Otherwise, what will happen? If the particles are not homogeneous in size, if the particles are not consistently packed, if the particles are not in uniform size, what will happen? It is going to increase the band broadening.
Multiple.
It is going to increase the band broadening. Band spreading or zone spreading is going to be increased. So therefore, the solid material, if you are using, that should be packed into this particular column tightly. The particles are uniform in size and packing must also be consistent. Apart from filling up of the packing material into this particular chromatographic column, we can also create a thin film over the walls of this packed column. The thin film will be having a thickness of 0.05 to 1 micrometer. 1 micrometer means the wall is made by solid. The wall is made by solid. That solid can be immobilized with a liquid stationary phase. I told you yesterday, liquid stationary phases are also used. And this liquid stationary phase can be immobilized in the chromatographic column by chemical processes. I will explain what is that chemical process later in the forthcoming slides. So the thin film will be having the thickness of 0.05 to 1 micrometer. So in an average, we can say this is the external diameter. The coil is having the external diameter. Internal diameter is different from external diameter. Internal diameter will be 2 to 4 millimeter. External diameter means this one, right? Yeah. External diameter means this one. This will be up to 15 centimeter. Nowadays, it can be extended to 50 centimeter, 15 to 50 centimeters. So, if the stationary phase we are using for the gas chromatographic separation is a solid packing material, what type of packing materials we are going to use? What are the packing materials we are going to use? So, very importantly, and one of the most widely used packing material is going to be diatomaceous earth. Diatomaceous earth. Have you heard about this?
Yes, sir.
Diatomaceous earth. It is available in the earth crust. It is available in the earth crust. To separate the components of clay minerals or clay or sediments, you can get diatomaceous earth. Very simple to compose the diatomaceous earth. What is diatomaceous earth? I have displayed here. It is composed by silica, alumina, and iron oxide. Iron oxide, of course, it must be inert. Iron oxide is not an inert species. It must be made inactivated before we use this diatomaceous earth. Otherwise, any unwanted interaction with the solute molecule is also expected. So we must be very careful while using this diatomaceous earth. The proportion is 80 to 90% silica, 2 to 4% alumina, Al2O3, 0.5 to 1% iron oxide. So this diatomaceous earth will be crushed into a fine powder, and we can make each and every particle of this diatomaceous earth into uniform particle, and that can be filled into the chromatographic column consistently. So in those cases, this stationary phase is going to act like a solid stationary phase. So the gas chromatography is gas solid chromatography. If you use diatomaceous earth, that is going to be gas solid chromatography, because the solid stationary phase we are going to use. And apart from this diatomaceous earth, even some calcined diatomaceous earth can also be used. What is the difference between calcined diatomaceous earth and diatomaceous earth? It is very simple. Calcined means we will subject the diatomaceous earth for chemical process under the temperature of 400 to 1000 degrees Celsius. So if you do this at a very high temperature, any impurities present over there undergo calcination, so they can be easily removed by calcination process. So that diatomaceous earth is called as calcined diatomaceous earth. So while using this type of stationary phases, even fire bricks can also be used. Fire bricks, brick material, right? There are also silica derivatives, but the selenal groups will be made completely inactive by heating. So we will destroy any unwanted adsorption sites present in fire bricks by heating. By heating that, the fire bricks will also be functioning like stationary phases. Can you hear me? Are you online?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So if you use this type of chromatographic columns, the advantages are also
Yes,
true.
sir.
The advantages are also true. Because these packed columns can be constructed very easily, and therefore they are cheaper, and they are robust. Robustness, you know what is robustness? If you perform the analysis, irrespective of the place, irrespective of the analyst, irrespective of the instrument, whatever, either Uditi may be performing the experiment, or Neeraj Nanaya may be performing the separation, or NRP may be performing the separation, we must be able to reach the results same, almost same, without much variation, right? So this is called as robustness. So the type of flexible character these packing columns or packed columns will be possessing, that's what they are robust. And if you look at the inner diameter, the diameter, internal diameter is very high. The internal diameter of these packed columns are very high. Therefore, even if we wanted to introduce the sample in larger amounts, we can introduce. Let us not to bother about the tailing. Let us not to bother about the fronting. Fronting is going to be the case if you overload the column, right? Fronting is nothing but a tail is observed at the beginning of the chromatographic peak because of the overloading of the sample. You know this. So let us not to bother about this fronting and the tailing, but whenever high sample capacity is required, we can use these packed columns, because when you take a sample in larger size, even we can also assume that the number of solutes present over there will be very, very minimum, very, very less. So the matrices may be present in the largest amounts. So we can exclude the matrices. We can remove the matrices by performing the separation by using this packed column. So that's what, whenever high sample capacity is required, we can use these packed columns. And very simple to introduce the sample into these packed columns. Again, because of the dimension. It is having larger ID, larger internal diameter. There is no any difficulty arise during the introduction of the sample into this particular chromatographic column. Therefore, it is very, very simple, very, very simple to introduce the sample. Of course, in the meantime, they also have the limitations. The resolution is going to be impaired if you use this packed column with the greater sample size. With the greater sample size, say for example, more than 25 microliters, if you introduce, tailing is going to be, fronting is going to be seen, and unwanted band broadening is also resulted. As a result, the height of the theoretical plate is going to be increased. The number of theoretical plates decreased because N is inversely proportional to H, and ultimately the resolution, the resolving power of the column is going to be suppressed because of the larger dimension. You're getting?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
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 Yes,
Yes,
because
sir.
of the larger dimension, we are going to lose the resolution. So this impaired resolution is due to the larger dimension. This is about packed columns. Are you clear? Packed columns are made by either stainless steel or glass or silica or Teflon. So they are having larger dimensions. Of course, they are cheap. Whenever the large sample throughput is required, we will use the packed columns. In contrast to the packed columns, the open tubular columns or capillary columns are other important class of gas chromatographic columns. You can see here a picture. A copper-like material is used in the construction of open tubular column. Can you see clearly?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Copper-like material. It is nothing but polyimide. The brownish color is imparted over the column. That is because of polyimide. This is called as a capillary column. It is having n number of threads which is shaped into a coil, circular coil. The overall column has been shaped into a circular coil. Why we made this as a circular coil? Because the compatibility should be attained to place this column into the chromatographic column, chromatographic oven. So oven should occupy this column. So this capillary is made by fused silica, which is utilized in order to construct the column. So the primary material to construct this open tubular column or capillary column is fused silica. The overall material is fused silica. The exterior surface, the outer surface of this column is coated by polyimide. This will make the color to become red, color to become brown. Brownish color is imparted because of polyimide coating, right? And this intensity of this brownish color will fade away with time. So dependent upon the intensity of this brownish color, we can decide whether the column is active or not, whether this can be usable or not. The lifetime is also decided by looking at the color outside. So this will be having internal diameter, one thread if you consider, the internal diameter will be 0.1 to 0.53 millimeter, less than a millimeter. And the length will go up to 400 meter, 15 to 400 meter. The ID, this is the ID, D diameter, external diameter is going to be 0.2 meter. So you must not be confused between internal diameter and the diameter. The diameter, this is external diameter, coil diameter. ID is the capillary diameter. Capillary diameter will be less than a millimeter, and the external diameter will be less than a meter, 0.2 meter, around 200 centimeter. This will be 200 centimeter. So this is the cross-sectional view of this capillary column. You can see very clearly. So in the previous slide, I have presented the circularly coiled capillary column. From that, a thread is taken, a capillary is taken, the terminal of the capillary is taken, and the internally, what are the different layers present in that capillary, you can see very clearly here. So outside, a polyimide coating is available, and at the mid, fused silica is available, because fused silica is the starting material or the raw material what we have used to construct the column. And inside, the stationary phase, which may be in the form of film or which may be in the form of thick film, liquid film, or solid film, whatever it is. Both the cases are possible. So this is the cross-sectional view. There will be three layers in the capillary column. One will be the external, which is polyimide coating. The other one will be fused silica, and third one will be stationary phase. Here exactly the solute molecules are going to interact. And this may be a thin film of solid, or this may be a thin film of liquid, whatever it is possible. So this type of column will be placed in the chromatographic instrument. So as you saw yesterday, injector, column, they are placed in the oven. Even detectors must be placed in the oven. Here it is interpreted wrong, because the solutes must be maintained at the temperature of their vaporization point. So the gas supply from the gas tank will be connected to a flow regulator or a pressure gauge. Now you can see, how do we see the pressure gauge? The inlet pressure will be maintained at least 50 lb per meter square, 50 psi pounds per square inch. So the adjustment of the pressure is done by this regulator, flow regulator. The meter will be showing you the pressure, what is the pressure adjusted. So the mobile phase will be moving at the adjusted flow rate towards the chromatographic column. So this is connected to the column, also to the injection port. So the mobile phase will be carrying the solute molecules after the introduction of the sample at the head of the chromatographic column. And inside this separation process is going to be taken place. Once the separation is over, the solute molecules are going to reach one by one towards the detector. Then the detector will amplify the signal by measuring some property of the analyte, and the chromatograms will be obtained. This is the commercial instrument. You can see they are available in the laboratories. Even in our college, one gas chromatograph is available in biochemistry department. I will take you there when I come back. So this is the gas chromatograph. This is the oven, thermostatically controllable oven. By means of this, you are able to program the temperature and even flow rate, because the pressure gauge is adjustable here. And the gas cylinder is placed outside. And that has been connected at the back of this instrument. Therefore, we can say the pressure can be monitored here. So this is the oven. Inside this, the column will be placed, and this is going to be the detector. So irrespective of the nature of the detector and type of the detector will be present at the last or at the top of the gas chromatograph. And this detector will give the signal, and that is going to be amplified with respect to the solute, and the readout device will be displaying you the chromatogram. This chromatogram can be printed if you want, then you can see further investigations. So there are four important types of open tubular or capillary columns. Number one is wall coated open tubular columns, surface coated open tubular columns, porous coated open tubular columns, and fused silica open tubular column. What I have explained so far under capillary columns, any problem? Are you all right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So open, are you getting my points? Audible?
Yes, sir.
Is there any
Yes,
Yes,
network
sir.
interruption?
Yes, sir.
Yes, network interruption is also there.
Yes, sir.
A bit, sir.
Bit, okay. Then you can ignore. If it is bit, you can ignore. Okay. So open tubular columns or capillary columns are of four important types: wall coated open tubular column, surface coated open tubular column, porous coated open tubular columns, and fused silica open tubular columns. The open tubular columns I have already explained. They belongs to fused silica open tubular columns, in which the stationary phase is fused silica itself. Silica will be present there, but the selenal groups are going to be removed. Silica groups are going to be removed. Then silica will become non-polar. If OH groups are removed from silica, that the silica OH group removed silica will become intermediately polar or non-polar. That itself will be functioning like a stationary phase. That is called as fused silica open tubular column. Wall coated open tubular column means the internal wall of the capillary. You take a capillary column, to the internal walls of this particular capillary, a thin film of a liquid stationary phase is coated, or a solid stationary phase is coated. To the open tubular columns, we can immobilize either a liquid stationary phase or a solid stationary phase. How to immobilize the solid stationary phase? You just prepare the solution of the stationary phase in a suitable liquid. You take the stationary phase solid, you dissolve that in a liquid, convert that into a solution. You pass the solution of the stationary phase through the chromatographic column, right? Fill it, and you heat the column so that the solvent will be evaporated and the solid stationary phase will be added to the walls of the capillary column. These type of columns are called as wall coated open tubular columns. Very simple. You pass the solution of the stationary phase through the capillary column and you evaporate the liquid by heating, keeping in the oven. By heating, keeping in the oven, the liquid is going to be evaporated. Solid is going to be added, sticked to the walls of the capillary. So that thin film which is stick to the walls of the capillary will be functioning like a stationary phase. So these type of columns are called as wall coated open tubular columns. The surface coated open tubular columns are different from wall coated open tubular columns. Surface coated open tubular columns means a liquid phase is going to be adsorbed over the solid support present in the capillary. The capillary is present there, capillary tube. It has wall and thin layer of the capillary. It has got a solid, and that solid is going to occupy liquid in GLC, gas liquid chromatography. Liquid stationary phase is going to be employed. That liquid stationary phase is going to be immobilized over the surface of the solid. That's what it is called as surface coated open tubular columns. While using this surface coated open tubular columns, the efficiency is very high because say wall coated open tubular columns, 1 meter of column will yield you around 5,000 theoretical plates. 5,000 theoretical plates. While using surface coated open tubular columns, the number of theoretical plates will be 50 to 100 times more when compared to wall coated open tubular columns. That's what the efficiency is more in SCOT. SCOT. Porous coated open tubular columns means a thin porous material will be made to be present inside the chromatographic column, and that will be functioning like a stationary phase. A thin porous material will be made to immobilize in the chromatographic column, that itself will be acting like a stationary phase. So that can be used as a column. That column is called as plot. So wall coated open tubular column denoted by WCOT, surface coated open tubular column is denoted by SCOT, and porous coated open tubular column is denoted by plot, PLOT. This slide represents the advantages of each and every different columns: fused silica open tubular columns, wall coated open tubular columns, surface coated open tubular columns, and their performance characteristics are compared with the packed column. You can see the length of fused silica open tubular column up to 100 meter, 100 meter, 100 meter. Packed column will be up to only 6 meter. Inside diameter very less. Here you can see here. Inside diameter, internal diameter 0.1 to 3, less than 1 millimeter in all these three, but packed column 2 to 4 millimeter. Efficiency, you can see the efficiency 2000 to 4000 plates per meter while using FSOT, up to 4000 while using WCOT, and 1200 while using surface coated open tubular columns, using packed columns up to only 1000. You can see the sample size here, very less sample size, which is expressed in nanograms, 75 nanograms, 1000 nanogram, 1000 nanogram in these three, but up to 10 power 6 nanograms of the sample may be required in order to complete the separation process. So that's what the open tubular columns are always advantageous, because very fast we can separate the solutes, and there will be flexibility while using fused silica column, because we can modify silica to any extent to our convenience. If we wanted to retain the polarity in the stationary phase, we can retain. Otherwise, we can convert that stationary phase into non-polar one. So it is very simple. That's what flexibility. So this is about the columns. So two types of columns are going to be employed: packed columns and open tubular columns or capillary columns. Inside the column, what type of stationary phases we will be filling, and particularly in gas liquid chromatography. So what is gas liquid chromatography? Solutes are going to be separated by using liquid mobile phase, liquid stationary phase, sorry, liquid stationary phase. Mobile phase will be gaseous. So what are the general characteristics of that particular liquid should fulfill? Number one is low volatility. Low volatility. Because if the stationary phase is volatile, while heating the stationary phase by keeping in the oven, the column will be kept inside the oven. It will start to undergo vaporization, then ultimately to ionization. So stationary phase characteristic will be destroyed. So it should be non-volatile, should be low volatile or non-volatile. So that's what the boiling point of the stationary phase liquid, whatever you are going to employ, should be at least 100 degrees Celsius higher than the maximum operating temperature of the column. Suppose you are going to maintain 400 degrees Celsius as a maximum temperature while performing the separation. The boiling point of the stationary phase liquid, what you are going to employ, must be 500 degrees Celsius. So it should be low volatile. Even if you increase the temperature to 400 degrees Celsius, the stationary phase is not going to boil, therefore it will be safe. And the second one is thermal stability. It should not undergo any thermal conversions, because many chemical compounds are going to be converted thermally. If we apply thermal energy, they are going to be called as thermally unstable compounds. But these stationary phases must be thermally stable. And the third one is chemical inertness. Large number of chemical solutes are going to interact with the stationary phase, but this stationary phase should not chemically react with the solute molecule. Only physical interaction with the solute should be taken place, such as van der Waals interaction or hydrogen bonding or adsorption process or partitioning, whatever. These are not chemical interactions. If chemical interaction takes place, the equilibrium will be shifted to the other direction, so the separation will not be possible. The originality of the solute molecule will be destroyed. Even the originality of the stationary phase is also going to be destroyed. So we must be very careful, chemically inert. And it should match the solvent characteristics in order to obtain better capacity factor and selectivity factor values with respect to the solute, because these two parameters are the solvent characteristics and they are going to decide the separation process. So the stationary phase liquid, whatever you are going to use, must match the property of the solute. Like dissolves like or like attracts like concept must be holds good here. The liquid stationary phase should have the ability to make the solute molecule to dissolve in that. Then only we can achieve the separation. Otherwise, it will be impossible, right? And of course, if we are able to obtain this type of stationary phase after fulfilling all these requirements, the retention time will be reasonable with acceptable distribution constant for each and every solute which is going to be separated by gas chromatography column. Okay, while using these capillary columns, the unwanted adsorption is going to be the common phenomena. This unwanted adsorption must be destroyed, and this is a stationary phase characteristic. Why the unwanted adsorption is going to be occurred there? Why? If you see the structure, if you see the first structure what I have presented here, the unwanted adsorption is due to, maximally due to, majorly due to the presence of OH groups here. So what do you call these OH groups? Selenol groups. These selenol groups will become a consequent functional groups for the unwanted physical adsorption process to be taken place by the solutes. So these groups must be destroyed. And this destruction of the unwanted adsorption sites over the surface of the stationary phase, and even some trace metal impurities will also be present in the stationary phase that have to be removed. unwanted trace metal impurities will also be present. They have to be removed. Otherwise, those trace metal impurities will impair the resolution, will impair the separation. So this will be done by treating the column. Column is packed with the stationary phase. That stationary phase can be treated with some special reagents such as dichloro-dimethylsilane. This is dichloro-dimethylsilane. Can you see the cursor movement?
Yes, sir.
This is
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
dichloro-dimethylsilane. This is a reagent. This is not a stationary phase. This is going to be the stationary phase. This is the stationary phase, what I have taken here. This is the unwanted adsorption site present over. So physical adsorption of the solute is going to increase the band broadening. So we have to destroy this groove. And this destruction will be done by chemical treatment. And this chemical treatment will also be done to remove the trace metal impurities. So step number 1 is you take the stationary phase, means the column. You wash the column or you chemically treat the column with the reagents such as dichloro-dimethylsilane or even hexamethylsilazane can also be used. You note it down. Hexamethylsilazane can also be used. So you increase the temperature. Chlorine is a good leaving group. So one chlorine is going to leave from dichloro-dimethylsilane. And silicon will have the affinity to get attached with this oxygen present in the OH group. So bonding takes place between two silicon atoms. Dimethyl chlorosilane ether, this is going to be with the elimination of acid. This is the first step. In the second step, chlorodisilane ether you take and you wash with methanol or alkali or acid further. Okay, if you wash this chlorodisilane ether with methanol or acid or a base, you are going to get a pure disilane ether. Chlorine is also eliminated here to get one more molecule of hydrochloric acid. Now this is called as disilane ether. This disilane ether is going to be less polar when compared to this one, and the methoxy group is attached here. Methyl oxysilyl stationary phase you have obtained. Dimethyl methyl oxysilyl stationary phase now it has been obtained. So this doesn't have any unwanted physical adsorbable sites such as OH groups, and this stationary phase is very useful for the separation of the solute molecules without initiating the adsorption process. So this chemical treatment of the stationary phase will be done in order to destroy the unwanted physical adsorption process. This will be done by treating the stationary phase with the reagents such as dichloro-dimethylsilane or hexamethylsilazane, followed by washing with either acid or alkali or methanol. Okay, so either you can use those stationary phases, they will have the property of like dissolves like. So the solute molecules will be matching with the property of the stationary phase. It may be polarity or whatever it is. So the liquid stationary phase will interact with the solute. So the solubility will be expected and hence the separation. And even we can malfunction the polarity of the stationary phase by immobilizing the functional groups such as cyano, carbonyl or hydroxy, cyanopropyl, even phenyl, trifluoromethyl group, trifluoromethyl propyl group, whatever it is. So we can convert the original stationary phase into non-polar one and even intermediately polar one by chemical treatment. We can modify the stationary phase because we are chemists. We know number of chemical reactions, how to convert one compound to other compound. There are several chemical reactions are available in the literature. We can make use of those literature available reactions and we can convert one compound to another compound. So the polar stationary phases can be obtained by modifying the original stationary phase by infusing cyano or carbonyl or OH functional groups. So you take any silica based stationary phase which is modified, that will be getting this normal structure, common structure. So this R may be any aryl or alkyl group. This R may be any aryl or alkyl group. This ether functional group SiO, this is called as dicylyl ether group, will be N in number, because this is polymeric in nature. We don't know how many silyl moieties are present over there. So we can write simply as N, where R may be any alkyl group or alkyl oxy group, any cyano group or carbonyl substituted group or hydroxy substituted group, whatever it is. So if you do so, the stationary phases can be converted into several types. If you take silica, we can get it in the form of polydimethyl siloxane. Polydimethyl siloxane means here R will be methyl group. Get it? R in this formula will be methyl group, that is called as polydimethyl siloxane. If you substitute phenyl group to any one of the R groups or any N of the R groups present over here, that is going to be phenyl polydimethyl siloxane. If you calculate number of R groups available there, out of overall R groups, only 5% of the R groups are attached by phenyl group. That is going to call as phenyl polydimethyl siloxane. Similarly, 50% phenyl polydimethyl siloxane can also be obtained. 50% trifluoropropyl polydimethyl siloxane can be obtained by chemical treatment, and so on. And similarly, 50% cyanopropyl polydimethyl siloxane. Here, 6 different liquid stationary phases presented. 6 different liquid stationary phases are presented. Out of 6, polyethylene glycol is not belonging to silica group. Polyethylene glycol is not belonging to silica group. This is the most polar stationary phase. Ethylene glycol is polar, highly polar. Even polyethylene glycol is also going to be highly polar. So this highly polar stationary phase, which is liquid, all these stationary phases are liquid. So these liquid stationary phases are used in GLC, you do remember. So their trivial names are presented here: OV1 Se30, OV3 Se52, OV17. I think already I have shared this slide, you can refer. You can look at the temperature up to 350 degrees Celsius. This first one can tolerate 350, 250, 200, 250 and 240. And this group of compounds will cover almost all variety of the compounds, 90% of the compounds. As we know, as chemists, we know different group of compounds. So 90% of the compounds are covered under these classes. So polydimethyl siloxane is applicable for the separation of non-polar hydrocarbons, polynuclear aromatics, steroids, and polychlorinated biphenyls. 5% of phenyl polydimethyl siloxane is applicable for the separation of fatty acids, methyl esters, alkaloids, drugs, halogenated compounds, and drugs, steroids, pesticides, glycols can be separated by using 50% phenyl silica and chlorinated aromatics. Like this, any other group of compounds can be separated. So you know, as the film thickness is more, the stationary phase thickness is going to be more, and that is going to impair the separation, as we have already explained that. Then column O1s, which have to be programmable, because we are going to program the temperature, particularly while performing the gradient elution. What is gradient elution? Gradient elution is done in order to elute the solutes dependent upon their property. Some group of solutes are going to be eluted under one range of temperature, and other group of solutes are going to be eluted under other range of temperature. So the same range of temperature is not going to be applicable for the separation of all those solutes. Therefore, we are going to program the temperature. By programming the temperature, if we are eluting the solutes, that is called as gradient elution in gas chromatography. By temperature programming, if we are eluting the solutes, that is called as gradient elution. So this programming is possible because of the role played by O1, right? So column O1, it should be thermostatically controllable. We must be able to adjust the required temperature. You must be able to adjust the required temperature. Then only it is possible to program the temperature. Otherwise, it will be impossible. So the oven what we are going to use must be thermostatically controllable. This thermostatically controllable oven is most suitable to adjust the temperature in reasonable elution time of 2 to 30 minutes. 2 to 30 minutes. So we can have the serial elution of the solutes one by one. Okay. So what is the oven role? What is the role of oven? Can anyone tell me?
Used in gradient separation.
Yes, for the gradient elution of the solutes, oven will be playing very, very important role. Next. And as I told you, the stationary phases can be modified into required type, and that can also be done by chemical treatment, and that is to modify the polarity of the stationary phase. Apart from manipulation of the polarity, cross-linking of the stationary phase is very, very important. Cross-linking. Why this cross-linking? Say for example, inside the chromatographic column, you be serious in this. Liquid stationary phase is present inside the chromatographic column. Liquid stationary phase is present inside the chromatographic column. That liquid stationary phase will be used as a medium of separation in the gas chromatography by initiating the interaction of the solute with the liquid stationary phase at different temperatures. So what the mobile phase will be doing? Mobile phase will be carrying the solute molecule through the chromatographic column. Whatever the solute separated, they are coming out along with the mobile phase and they will reach the detector. Solutes not only reach the detector, but also very minimum volume of the stationary phase liquid, which is also going to come out from the chromatographic column. The liquid stationary phase in the column will also start to come out from the chromatographic column. That is called as column bleeding. Column bleeding. This column bleeding is a very severe factor, very, very serious factor. We have to get serious measure to avoid this column bleeding. Otherwise, the life of the chromatographic column will be declined. If the column bleeding is regular, as a consequence of this column bleeding, the lifetime of the column is going to be affected. So this column bleeding can be avoided by modifying the stationary phase by the process of converting the stationary phase into a highly cross-linked one. This cross-linking will be done very simply. You just take the column which has been immobilized with the stationary phase. You introduce peroxide, hydrogen peroxide into that. Hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is a good reagent to initiate the free radical mechanism. You know this. As a chemist, we must know this is a very, very fundamental role of hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is a beautiful reagent. It is going to initiate the free radical mechanism for many organic compounds. So you have the silica moiety SiO, Si, R. So R is methyl group. So if these two silicon derivatives are combined together, this methyl group is going to be converted into methyl radical from those two silica molecules. Then ultimately, those two methyl radicals are going to be combined together to form a cross-linked one. So free radical mechanism is initiated by introducing the hydrogen peroxide. By that free radical initiated reaction, we can cross-link the stationary phase. As the degree of cross-linking is increased, the mobilization ability of that particular stationary phase over the surface of the solid of the capillary will also be increased, so the column bleeding can be avoided. So, and this apart from free radical mechanism by introducing hydrogen peroxide, even we can expose the liquid stationary phase to the gamma radiations. We can expose them to the gamma radiations. Gamma radiations are also better media for initiating free radical polymerization reactions. So that's what the column bleeding. Column bleeding is nothing but during the elution of the solutes, some amount or some volume of the liquid stationary phase is also going to be leaked out from the chromatographic column. That is called as column bleeding. This column bleeding can be avoided by using highly cross-linked stationary phase in the chromatographic column. Okay, let us move on to the last component of this gas chromatograph, that is detector. One is the carrier gas, the second one is sample injection system, and the third one will be the column, fourth one will be oven, and the fifth one will be detectors. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
I think no one is sleeping. Everyone is awakened.
no, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So next, detectors. So what is the role of detector? Detector is very important in detecting the solute which is reaching the detector after its elution. It will come out from the chromatographic column at the end. So the serial elution of the solute molecules will reach the detector. So the detector will be playing very important role of producing the signal, what type of analyte is present in the sample, how much of the solute is present in the sample. We can decide by the role played by the detector. Every detector you're going to use, of course, must possess some ideal requirements. When they are going to fulfill the requirements, then only we can call them as ideal detectors, otherwise no. Any detector you are going to choose must possess adequate sensitivity, because we are not going to use milligram levels of the solutes just as you do in titration. Titration, what you do, you will take 10 ml or 5 ml of the solution to titrate. Here, we don't require 5 ml, 10 ml or 25 ml or 50 ml of the solution to perform the analysis. Even if you take 5 ml of the solution, that will be containing only 10 nanogram of the solute. So, adequate sensitivity it should possess. We will be raising the temperature up to 400-600 degrees Celsius. So the detector should produce a stable and reproducible results. It is very important. So its functioning should be ideal, irrespective of the temperature, irrespective of the sample, irrespective of the condition what we are going to maintain, and even irrespective of the nature of the mobile phase, what type of, even if you use hydrogen or helium or krypton or neon, xenon, argon, nitrogen, whatever it is. So stable and reproducible results must be obtained. And if you introduce 10 ppm sample or 100 ppm sample, the signal given by the detector must relate it to the order of magnitude of the solute. The magnitude, the quantity of the solute must be directly proportional to the order of the magnitude of the signal given by the detector. So linear response. And it must have the capability to withstand the temperature at least up to 400 degrees Celsius. And a short response time is required, because a detector should not take 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 5 minutes or 1 hour or 2 hours to give the signal. So within a short period of time, we must be able to obtain the signal from the detector or the response from the detector. And it should be very highly reliable for use, and it must be very easy to handle. No need to explain further about this. If there is easiness to handle, then that detector is going to be analyst friendly. So whoever willing to handle the detector, that must give the access for that person. And the way of responding must be similar for all those solutes. Means the selectivity must be very good. And very importantly, it should be non-destructive to the sample. So at the end, we are going to get the solute molecule. That solute, after getting detected by the detector, its chemical properties should not be destroyed. So these are the fundamental requirements a particular detector must fulfill. So after considering the various detectors, what we will use in gas chromatography, thermal conductivity detector, flame ionization detector, and electron capture detector. First three are very important detectors in gas chromatography. They are most commonly used detectors: thermal conductivity, flame ionization, and electron capture detectors. This thermal conductivity detector is also called as universal detector for gas chromatography, because almost 95% of the solutes which are separated by gas chromatography are able to be detected by this detector. That's what it is, a universal detector. It is a universal detector. Almost all gases, non-ionizable compounds containing metal, organic compounds containing up to 25 carbon atoms, and organometallics, right? All these compounds can be detected by the universal detector, thermal conductivity detector. That's what it is called as universal detector. Flame ionization detector, by the principle of its functioning, it is applicable only for the detection of hydrocarbons. It is not applicable for the compounds containing either nitrogen, oxygen, formic acid, or say even carbon dioxide. It is not suitable. So only organic compounds, mainly hydrocarbons, if they are present in the sample, those type of compounds can be detected by this flame ionization detector. This electron capture detector, again, by the principle of its functioning, it is applicable only for the detection of halogenated compounds, because halogenated compounds are able to release the electron very easily, and that electron is going to be captured by the solute, captured by the other solute or the detector which is placed at the end of the chromatography column. So based on the capturing of the electron, it is going to give the signal. Of course, mass spectrometer, thermionic detector, electrolytic conductivity detector, photoionization, Fourier transform IR, these detectors, last four are used seldom, very rarely, very rarely. Mass spectrometer will be used provided the fragmentation pattern for the given molecule is very aware, very aware. One must have the knowledge of fragmentation pattern or mass spectrometric principle. Then only we will be very comfortable to use this mass spectrometric detectors. Of course, all these detectors are widely used, are commonly used in gas chromatography. If you look at this, these values are going to give the detection limit and hence the sensitivity. 500 picogram per ml. It is the least sensitive. Thermal conductivity detector is the least sensitive among flame ionization and electron capture detector, because flame ionization detector is having the capability to detect 1 picogram per second. Picogram means 10 power minus 12 grams. Femtogram means 10 power minus 15 grams. 5 into 10 power minus 15 grams per second electron capture detector. Highly sensitive detector. So let us discuss about the thermal conductivity detector. Can you be able to see this figure, thermal conductivity detector?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
No.
sir.
Somebody said no.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So this thermal conductivity detector will be functioning based on the principle that you take a hot body. You take a hot body, any hot body you take. When a hot body loses heat, any hot body you consider, when a hot body loses heat, then definitely there will be variation in the thermal conductivity. You take any body, when it loses heat energy, its resistance will be varied. Therefore, the thermal conductivity is also going to be varied. This variation in the thermal conductivity is dependent upon the rate at which the thermal conductivity of the carrier gas is different from the thermal conductivity of the solute. That's it. This is the principle of this thermal conductivity detector. You can see here, yes, this thermal conductivity
Sir.
detector will be functioning based on the principle that when a hot body loses heat at the rate which depends on the thermal conductivity of the carrier gas and the solute. That's it. Because carrier gas you will be using, it is going to enter the thermal conductivity detector or a hot body. So hot body is going to lose some amount of heat energy. Not only carrier gas is also carrying the solute molecule. when the solute molecule along with the carrier gas enters the hot body, hot body is going to lose some more amount of the heat. As a result, there is variation, there is a drift in the thermal conductivity. That variation or the differentiation of the thermal conductivity between the solute and the carrier gas is measured in these thermal conductivity detectors. Okay. Are you able to understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Next, what are the components of this thermal conductivity detector? There are two heated filaments will be present. One heated filament will be given the provision to the carrier gas, and the other heated filament will be present, will be given the provision with the carrier gas and the components from the chromatographic column. This is from the chromatographic column. This is from the carrier gas tank. Only carrier gas of the mobile phase is moving through this particular window, and here the carrier gas is also not only moving itself, but also it is carrying the solute from the chromatographic column. Okay, these filaments are made by either platinum or tungsten or rhenium. These filaments are made by either platinum or rhenium or tungsten. These two are formed in the form of a Wheatstone bridge. These two coils, these two filaments, tungsten or platinum filaments, are arranged in the form of Wheatstone bridge, and they are kept in between a metallic body. So both of them are connected to a current source. Both of them are connected to a current source, and DC potential is applied for these two filaments. DC potential is applied to these two filaments. Before the solute molecule is separated, only carrier gas will be made to move across this filament. This filament is having only fetched by the carrier gas. So because of the movement of the carrier gas into this hot body, there is variation in the heat energy. This body is going to lose its heat energy and hence the thermal conductivity. Similarly, when a carrier gas is carrying the solute molecule and the solute molecules along with the carrier gas reach this Wheatstone bridge or this hot filament, the solute molecules will become responsible to generate some amount of the thermal conductivity. The difference between the thermal conductivity before and after entry of the solute molecule to the Wheatstone bridge will be recorded by means of an amplifier. So that will be given by measuring the property of conductance of the solute. This detector will be based functioning. Property of the conductance. So after reaching the filament, they will be going outlet. Here also carrier gas will be going out, and the solute molecule will also be going out as a waste. So amplifying device will be amplifying the signal with respect to the thermal conductance of the solute molecule by taking the difference. And sometimes we also use the reference. What is the thermal conductivity of the reference and what is the thermal conductivity of the sample? That's what. So this is the commercial instrument, cross-sectional view of the commercial instrument. You can see here two heated filaments. This is one and this is other one. This is the metallic body. And here the element will be passing, coming out. The effluent from the column will be passing and it will be coming out, and therefore the thermal conductivity will be recorded by means of the amplifying units which are situated. What are the advantages of this? It is a universal detector because it responds to all those solutes, and it is non-destructive detector, which is rugged. Means malfunctioning of this detector will become very easy. We can raise the temperature during the separation to any level. We can rise. So malfunctioning is very easy. So it is a rugged detector. But it also carries the limitations such as the sensitivity will be varying from one component to other component, and the linear range will be limited because thermal conductance is needed to be measured. Therefore, the linear range cannot be expected. And it is sensitive to temperature change because thermal conductivity is dependent upon the resistance, and resistance in turn it is dependent upon the temperature, and hence it is not suitable for the quantification work. Next, flame ionization detectors. Flame ionization detectors will be functioning based on the principle that you assume, forget about the detector now, you just assume a flame, you just assume a burner, Bunsen burner. You ignite the Bunsen burner by means of a fuel and oxidant. Air is going to be oxidant here, and hydrogen is going to be the fuel here. Hydrogen is going to be the fuel. That's what in Bunsen burner will be doing. LPG gas will be the fuel and oxygen will be the oxidant. You ignite the flame. You ignite the flame. You know, the flame ionization detector is suitable for only hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons can be burned, right? Hydrocarbons can be burned. What are the products of combustion of hydrocarbons? Hydrocarbons are combustible to produce carbon dioxide, positively charged species, negatively charged species, free radicals, and ions, electrons. So ions, free radicals, and electrons are the combustible materials such as carbon dioxide. Wow. So
Yes.
when you make the hydrocarbon organic compound which is separated from the chromatographic column, to reach this flame, because there is a provision, see here at the bottom, exit end of column is connected to the detector, means this is a provision for the passage of the solute towards the detector. So the solute is carried by the carrier gas and it will reach the flame. All those organic compounds will undergo combustion here to produce ions, free radicals, combustion products of those organic compounds, and electrons. There are two types of ions are produced here, positively charged species and negatively charged species. These positively charged species are going to be attracted by the collector electrode here. Here is a collector electrode, and there will be a repeller electrode present. Repeller electrode will be maybe the stem of the Bunsen burner, or a separate repeller electrode can be placed over here. Two electrodes are required. One is collector electrode and the repeller electrode. Combustion admele, because of the combustion, the ions are going to be formed. Positively charged species are going to be attracted by the cathode, which is negatively charged, or they are going to be repelled by the repeller or the positively charged electrode, which is going to be anode. In the same time, there is a movement of the electrons also. Because of the combustion, electrons are also generated because the compounds are hydrocarbons. As a result of the attraction of these positively charged species or the repulsion of these positively charged species by the cathode or the anode, there is a movement of the electrons are also expected. As a result, there is a generation of the current. So when you apply a potential of 50 to 100 millivolts, 100 volts, we can see this process after igniting the burner and after the solute reach the burner space. So the solute undergo combustion to produce cations, anions, electrons, and free radicals. Free radicals, they are not going to be fetched towards the collector or repeller. Only positively charged species are going to reach the collector electrode. Therefore, the electrons are in motion. So the current is generated. That generated current is directly proportional to the concentration of the solute, and the place at which the current is generated means the retention time, that is related to the type of the solute. So the amount of the current generated is proportional to the concentration of the solute, and the interval at which the current is increased, that is called as the identity factor. So the solutes are quantified or characterized in this manner. So this is how the schematic representation of the flame ionization detector, which will be having a provision for the passage of the hydrogen gas, mixture of hydrogen gas and air, and the flame is ignited by allowing the mixture of hydrogen and the air flame. this flame will be given the provision to get ignited, to get aspirated with the effluent from the chromatographic column, where the combustion is going to be taken place. After the combustion, this collector electrode will be attracting the positively charged species if the collector electrode is negatively charged. If the collector electrode is positively charged, anions are going to be attracted, vice versa. You do remember, positively charged species are attracted towards this collector electrode if this electrode is negatively charged. If the electrode is positively charged, this will be functioning like an anode, and the negatively charged species will be attracting towards this. So a device is used to measure the current. That measure current is proportional to the concentration. This is the commercial instrument, flame ionization detector, what we will use. There is a provision to get connected with the column, and this is provision to get connected with the fuel, and this is the waste. Just like a flame photometer. Just like a flame photometer. Of course, this also possesses some advantages because it will respond to organic compounds except formic acid and other inorganic gases such as nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon dioxide, because they are not going to yield free radicals or cations or anions or electrons. So this detector is going to be unsuitable. This response to water is very low because water has the boiling point of 100 degrees Celsius. Ionization of water will become somewhat difficult, and it will be decline process, therefore very slow process we can expect. And organic, the response ability will be decreases as the number of oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, and allied substituents are increased. Carrier gas, very important, they must be inert. So hydrogen cannot be used there because hydrogen will be used as a fuel, but hydrogen cannot be used as a carrier gas. If we use it, it will affect the resolution, it will affect the detection. So helium, nitrogen, neon, argon, krypton, and xenon can also be used. But it is destructive to the sample because sample is going to undergo combustion. This is the disadvantage. And the other one is electron capture detector. This electron capture detector will be functioning almost, we can say, in opposite to the flame ionization detector. So you assume here the electron capture detector will be having a beta ray emitter, such as nickel 63 or tritium. You can see here, this is a beta ray emitter. This is made by either nickel 63, isotopic form of nickel 63, or tritium. So when you hit this beta ray emitter after applying some amount of the potential to this beta ray emitter, because it is connected to the negative and positive terminal of power supply device, it is electrically charged. From the column, if there is only mobile phase is moving, mobile phase is nothing but it is an inert gas. It is an inert gas. If at the initial stage, means at the initial stage only mobile phase is moving, while only mobile phase is moving, mobile phase will reach the beta ray emitter, and beta ray emitter will interact with the mobile phase, and consequently it will release electrons because it is a beta radioactive emitter. Now the stream, the chamber beta ray containing chamber is full of electrons now. Some number of electrons are present over here. Next, solutes are started to come one by one. So at the initial stage, at the beginning, only mobile phase is moving, electrons are generated, so current is increased substantially. A steady state current is recorded by the ammeter. Once the solute migration or the solute movement is started, the solutes are going to capture the electron which have been emitted by this beta emitter, so that there is a declining of the current or decrease in the current can be seen in the ammeter. So solutes are separated out from the chromatographic column. The solutes, whatever separated and coming out from the chromatographic column, they are going to capture the electron which is present in this flow here. So as a result of the capturing, this is called as electron capturing by the solute. As a result of this electron capturing, the current is going to be drifted from its original value So this is going to be proportional to the amount of the solute or the nature of the solute, right? So this is how beta ray emitter will be functioning in electron capture detector. This is the commercial representation of commercial electron capture detector. You can see the provision here for the inlet and the outlet and the connection for the cathode and the anode. And inside a beta ray emitter will be present that is going to be hit by the mobile phase and the solute molecules, and the relative programming will be done in order to get the signal amplified. Next, so apart from these detectors, so let us see some applications. This chromatographic technique is applicable for the separation of the solutes present in environmental samples, pharmaceutical samples, clinical samples, biological samples, and drug samples. Any variety of the sample you take, it is applicable for the separation. So at the end, you will be ending up with the chromatograms. So either the solute is present or not, that can be made sure by using a standard. You can see these two chromatogram present in the up and down. You can see I am suspecting whether solute A, B, C are present in the given sample. This is my question. So we can subject the given sample for the separation process and let us obtain the chromatogram. And you take the solutes which are expected to be present in the sample as standards, you run them. You compare the peaks available at the relative positioning. If this A is matching with the retention time of peak here and the same B peak is matching with this, and similarly C, you can assume solutes are present. So even qualitative analysis, similarly here, acetaldehyde, ethanol, methanol, isopropanol, acetone, N-propanol, all these mixtures can be eluted within 2.8 minutes. 2.8 minutes. So you take the mixture, and if you are suspecting either N-propanol is present or not, first you run the mixture containing all these three compounds, and you make sure by running only N-propanol separately using the same chromatographic procedure. If there is a peak existing exactly at the same retention time, you can make sure that N-propanol is present in your sample. Similarly, these are the other advantages. So peak presence at the relative position, relative retention time. So this compound is present at this particular time, so we can make sure this compound is present. Similarly, this compound, and similarly this. So like this, qualitative analysis can be done by gas chromatography, and the gas chromatography is also not excluded from the quantitative analysis. It is also very useful for the quantitative analysis also, by comparing the area. Yeah, the height of the chromatogram, the height of the chromatographic peak is going to give you what is the amount of the solute present. Therefore, quantitative analysis is also possible. So the relative peak area can be plotted as a function of the concentration, because we can take a standard. You can take a standard, known standard, say for example, paracetamol you have to analyze. You take the standard paracetamol sample, you prepare a series of solutions, and you introduce each and every solution to the chromatographic column, record the number of theoretical plates or peak area. So if you have prepared 0 ppm, 5 ppm, 10 ppm up to 25 ppm paracetamol, for all those 6 solutions, you record the peak area. You plot a graph of peak area versus concentration. Then you take the tablet extract or the sample containing unknown amount of the paracetamol. You introduce to the chromatograph, obtain the peak area, then find out the concentration. So calibration curve method. So quantitative analysis is going to be useful. And similarly, these are the different chromatograms obtained for the separation of say 16 compounds, 4 compounds, 5 compounds, 11 compounds, 11, 6. So fluorinated aromatics can be determined, blood alcohols can be determined, rapeseed oil can be determined, alcohols, 16 different alcohols can be determined, steroids can be determined, like this. So chromatographic technique is very, very useful. This chromatogram you can observe, the chromatographic condition is presented for the separation of variety of pesticides, by using hydrogen carrier gas, adjusting the flow rate of 2.5 ml per minute at a constant flow, 60 centimeter per second, we can vary. 50 degrees Celsius will be the initial temperature, 50 degrees Celsius, and that can be varied up to 300 degrees Celsius. This may be in order to do the gradient illusion. So let you elute some solutes at one particular temperature. If you seen there are no other solutes are eluted at the same temperature, you further increase the temperature to elute the solutes one by one. So this is the condition, and this is the dimension of the column: 5 meter length, 0.53 millimeter internal diameter, and the column also hyphenated with 30 centimeter by 0.25 millimeter, particle size of 0.25 micrometer. 10 microliter sample is introduced. So two columns are used here. One is 5 meter by 0.53 millimeter, 30 meter by 0.25 millimeter. This is the internal diameter of the column. This is the length of the column. This is the thickness of the film. So like this, you can see this diagram slide. The oven temperature, injection temperature, detection, refractive index detector is used. Flame ionization detector is used here. A flow rate, injection volume, everything is given, and the number of compounds, 28 compounds can be separated. 28 compounds. So within the small period of time, no other separation tool can yield these type of excellent results. So this is about chromatography, gas chromatography, and here you can see a small video which is going to demonstrate how the gas chromatographic separation is going to be done. So this is captured by Modern Instrumental Techniques for Schools and Colleges, Royal Society of Chemistry, London. See, this is at the end. At the end, you are going to get the chromatograms. So what type of solutes are present in the mixture? This is the capillary column, fused silica. This is packed column. Okay. Are you all right? Have you seen the video?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
So this is all about the gas chromatography. So right from the definition of gas chromatography and classification, components of instruments, everything we have discussed. So any doubts? You are welcome to ask. Have any doubts? You should ask the questions. You should get clarified with your doubts. Don't hesitate. No doubts. Hey, all of you are in your house, yeah. Don't hesitate. You are not in the college. I think someone of you will be in the first half. Don't hesitate. You ask your question. You must be very dare enough. Otherwise, I don't leave you because I am in house. I don't have any restriction of period or timings. I will extend my lecture up to 1 o'clock. Shall I? Shall I extend? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You should
Yes,
speak.
sir.
Why you are not speaking?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, are you all right about the gas chromatography?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes, sir.
No problem.